Hi, I am your host, Brent Feldman, and we are back with another episode of Mix and Matchbox. Today, I am joined by Andrew Howlett. He is the CEO of Struck. And hi, Andrew. How are you doing? Looking forward to jumping in.
Yeah, doing great. Good to be here. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. I'll get started on the first question here, and this is pretty straightforward, but you're the CEO of Struck, an agency in Salt Lake City, and recently, I guess it was your organization that helped CHIA rebrand their online presence, and I took a look at the site. It's pretty fun, and I just have to ask off the bat: was the Ice Spice CHIA your idea or someone else's?
So the concept was our idea in terms of like the concept, not the specific Ice Spice, but the idea, the concept of kind of a little more of the throwback, using a lot of the sort of older imagery and older feel, older messaging that CHIA has had, because of course it's like cross generations now, and everybody knows about CHIA, and so that was our concept, and then they took it and did that actual execution of it, which is amazing and love it. Yeah, I mean, you talk about a fun brand to work for. CHIA checks kind of all the boxes, and they were really great to work with, very, very kind, and gave us a lot of sort of leeway to experiment and push, the boundaries on that site. And I mean, it's been incredible for them, incredible for us in terms of just the recognition that's gotten.
That's awesome. Yeah, there was a lot of fun stuff associated with all the animations, video, and yeah, I totally agree. All the throwback stuff was pretty cool to see. But either way, great job. It was great looking site. Yeah.
So team loves to work on that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Well, I'm very interested because like Nika Source is another organization that you're a part of. And, and I guess it's a development and talent resource business that's based in Managua, Nicaragua. And so it's interesting. My wife is actually, she's half Nicaraguan. I've been there, definitely probably about 10 times. I was just there in June. An amazing country with incredible people, but not many people pick Nicaragua specifically. So how did you put this business together, and what do you think makes Nearshore development services so powerful?
Yeah, so it started about 11 years ago, and I was with my previous agency, Rain, and really what we needed at the time, so Adobe had moved into Utah. And Adobe was on a hiring spree, and in the course of just literally 3 months, I lost like 6 or 7 employees, because at the time, they still had just a US pay scale, which their only offices were San Francisco and New York. So they were paying ridiculous wages here, and I absolutely encouraged some of my employees to take it because it was like life-changing for them, but it still hit really hard. So, I started looking outside of Utah just to see if there was some other place. And then I had a good friend who owns an agency in Colombia, and I was just talking to him, and he kind of gave me some of the things and what worked, what doesn't, and a little bit of his story there. So we started looking outside the country, and I just kind of was going down. I liked the idea of Central America because of, well, a couple reasons. One is proximity, but two is just time. Time zone is nice. Half the year, Nicaragua's the same as Mountain Standard. The other half, they're Central Time. So I was looking in Honduras originally because I had a employee that worked for me at the time that was from Honduras. He was willing to move back with his family there for a year or two to, help set it up. And then I read some unfavorable things about the country's crime, which, look, can be anywhere, but it was one of those things that I was a little nervous about that. And so then we moved on to Nicaragua, and I had my CTO at the time. He had actually served a LDS mission in Nicaragua. So we went down, and I mean, within 2 days of being there in this sort of fact-finding trip, we knew it was the right place. We were so impressed with the people we were meeting with. They had a government entity that was there to direct, kind of attract foreign businesses, and they took us around to a lot of different places and met a lot of different people. And so that trip, we actually started to put out some feelers and see who we could hire, just to start off with. The real need for us at the time, besides, competing against Adobe and others for development talent, was I wanted the ability to have a bench, a bench of developers. Because, in our industry, in the agency world, it's so up and down. And, sometimes it's crunch time and we've got tons of work. and we're burning people out or we're having to hire contractors. But I couldn't afford to have a bench of talent in Utah. Just way too expensive. And so, I can afford to do that. So my model then going forward was I always had essentially 1 to 2, in aggregate, sort of people sitting on the bench. There were FTE, folks. And of course they were working on things. But what it did then is when we did get busy, I didn't have to, do this big, huge ramp up or have to go and hire contractors. I already knew who the team was. And then if that was the new norm, then I would either hire more. And I didn't really care whether we hired them in Nicaragua or in Utah, but I just wanted to make sure I always had that little bit of a bench and that buffer. And it worked great because it helped me keep talent because people weren't getting burnt out. They weren't having to go through a month straight of, working crazy hours because we were providing the resources that they needed. And so it worked really, really well and it worked really well. But then I transitioned. So it was really at the time, it was just helping to staff for Rain. Then when I sold my agency, Rain, in 2018, I kept that entity and really kind of pivoted at that point to more of a staff augmentation role and, play sort of for US companies. And now, it's up to, gosh, I think we're about 100 people between Nicaragua and we have now some talent in Argentina as well. And, from a model perspective and why it works well, here, particularly there's a kind of, I think, a specific set of companies that it works really well for. Some are those who are VC funded, or private equity backed, whatever, that are needing to get every last inch of, of stretch out of the budgets that they have and the dollars that's been invested. So this clearly allows them. There's an economic benefit. It's not nearly as sort of, whatever you want to call it, cheap as what some of the others sort of around the other sides of the world in Bali or, Philippines or maybe in, Eastern Europe. And that's okay. That's not the model. The model is very much about proximity. A lot of the companies that work with NicaSource actually go down and visit the teams. They'll fly their teams up to visit with them. That's just not as easy to do if you're in the Philippines or in, again, Eastern Europe or wherever. And then also just even from a language perspective, all of my employees do speak English, and half of them probably speak better English than I do. But that even from just an accent perspective, like Americans, we're very comfortable with a Latin American accent. We experience it every day. They're part of our communities. They're part of our neighbors. And so it's not as sometimes as, I don't want to say jarring, but sometimes when you get on a phone call with a call center, for a company and it's this accent, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time really understanding. So clients love that aspect of it as well. So from a cost perspective and a, proximity, and then even just sort of able to communicate with them, effectively, it makes a lot of sense. And I think then nearshoring, again, coming especially out of COVID, and I think it proved that people can work remote. And, in particular, I believe software developers, even when I had all my developers in the office, their headphones were on, they were locked in, they were shutting out the rest of the world anyway. So it wasn't a big sort of shift for them. And I think that people now see that. And again, economically it works and you can find great talent. And the Nicaraguan people, I firmly believe that for whatever reason, and I have lots of hypotheses, but the Nicaraguan folks I have, they're more creative thinkers. And I think part of that is just growing up, they had to be kind of creative in the way that they, whether it was for their fun or for their work or whatever, they're very creative problem solvers. Mm-hmm. And I love that, and have this, I'll stack them up against any developer I've ever had on staff, and they're so amazing at what they do, and also just wonderful people. One other just quick note that I will mention that I think is interesting, and I'd be curious to know if this is your experience in Nicaragua as well, but I was meeting with a business owner down there one time, this is years ago, and he says, so have you noticed that there's hardly anybody like panhandling or, like begging for money? And I was like, you know what? I haven't really thought about it, but you're right. Like, I don't see it. He says, there'll be people at like traffic lights that are wanting to wash your windows, or they want to juggle or sell you something. And he says, the Nicaraguan people were very proud. We don't want a handout. We want to earn it. We want something. We want to do something, for you or for that. And it was very sort of inspiring to me that's sort of this, that feeling in the country is just, no, we want to be productive. We want to be, helpful and do whatever we can, but don't just hand it to us. We want to earn it. And I've seen that in all of my interactions there, and just have such wonderful things. Not to mention, it's just a beautiful country with so many incredible places and things to visit and see. So anyway,
Yeah.
I feel like I just gave a pitch for, visit Nicaragua.com or whatever. I don't even know if that's a real website, but
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I'll back you up on it. I mean, like, I will definitely say that, since my wife is from there, and going there, multiple times, yeah, I have nothing but positive things to say about, the country, the people, the landscape. I mean, like, everything is, it's really, it's dynamic, it's interesting, it's amazing. And I think, you nailed it saying that, like, the talent that they have there, I'd put them up against the best in the world. Actually, my wife, friends with, like, designers down there that are just, wonderfully creative, talented, hardworking. And then, oh my God, just like, like, just the speed at which sometimes they can work too is just amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, like, I will say, yeah, I agree with everything that you said.
Yeah, and I think from a nearshoring perspective, again, like I have nothing bad to say for people who do have teams that are halfway around the world, because I think in a lot of cases that makes a lot of sense for some companies. I think the nearshoring piece just works for, I think, a certain group that need, again, efficiencies, need to stretch their dollars as far as they possibly can, but also just more than anything, just finding the right talent and the right people. And it can check all the boxes and allow for good opportunities for companies.
Absolutely. That's so cool. Well, and I'm glad you also, had even touched on a little bit of your experience at Rain, and how, utilizing the talent and having a bench. I feel like that's super important and helpful to have those, that kind of thing. And in Nearshore, you had mentioned the time zone advantage. So yeah, that's really, that's definitely, that's very cool. So, from, SLC to STL, where we're at in St. Louis here,
Right.
we're in cities that I guess provide some, as we've just spoken about, cost efficiency, but we provide some cost efficiency as opposed to the coast. And can you make the case that there are that there's even other benefits to using agencies that aren't in those coast areas besides just cost? What do you think the main benefits are about like dealing with an agency maybe from Salt Lake City as opposed to, like, in LA or something?
Right. I think one of the biggest benefits is, and I don't want to say this too negatively about some of the coasts, but a lot of people go to the coast to get that first and second job and get their sort of LinkedIn profile started. But their intent is to get out of there as soon as possible, right? And then they move, whether it's back home or to a place like St. Louis or like Utah, Salt Lake, because they want to be there. And we've seen that a lot. I mean, I bet half of my, not half, maybe a third of my team here at Struck were people who came to Utah to go skiing and never left, and they want to be here. And these are people who worked at big agencies in New York. These are people who have worked, internationally. These are people who have all the sort of credentials, but this is where they want to live. This is where they want to be. Yeah. And, when you talk about quality of life, you cannot even come close to convincing me that, somebody who's is fulfilled in their sort of work-life balance and is happy, that their creative output is not going to reflect that. Yeah. And again, I knew way too many people, and my previous agency, I had an office in New York, and I'll tell you, whenever I'd go visit and I'd see, him talk to my team there, it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you live in this place paying this much money. And, and of course, in my mind, I'm going, I know how much I pay you. There's no way that you're doing anything else other than just literally sleeping and working. Yeah, that's about it. And so you now have this group of people that are here because they want to be here, they want to live here. So I believe that the creative output is higher. The other piece is I think for at least, and look, this has been a very nice benefit for Struck. We are known in this market. We're known in the Intermountain West. We are the premier creative shop in Utah, and like I said, kind of the Intermountain West. And so we're very lucky that we have people really wanting to work for us and wanting to be here. And so I think that ties in very closely with what I mentioned earlier, is they want to be here. They want to live here. They want to be here. And so we're able to provide a service that, yeah, I mean, there is certainly some cost benefits, but also I believe there's just some creative juices that aren't necessarily always firing in the other markets.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate that. And I mean, like, it's one thing just to, vie for your own city, but you're right. Where I will say I love going to the Bay Area. It's a beautiful place, but every time I'm there, I'm like, and I couldn't imagine living here. But, yeah, so that's cool. It's like where you really enjoy, living, that does it. You get a different kind of committed sort of candidate and somebody who's doing, that sort of work with a, different sort of mindset. So that's interesting. I really appreciate that perspective. So I guess your agency, Struck, does focus on biotech and tourism specifically. And so why has it been worth your time to go in on those industries, maybe just specifically?
Yeah, so we have a very long history of tourism. We've done a lot of work, including, state of Utah Travel and Tourism was our client for 15 years. We took Utah from one of the lowest performing states of dollars invested to #1 in the country every year. And a lot of that was just about telling the right story. It was about creating a brand that people understood. And so tourism is certainly a sweet spot for us. Biotech is one of these interesting ones that just sort of happened. We had a client come to us that wanted us to help. They were they had raised a bunch of money, but their end goal was to either be bought or, IPO or whatever. And, when we talk about CMOs in biotech, that's not a chief marketing officer, it's a chief medical officer. So oftentimes we're talking to people who are just not marketing creative, minded at all. And so we're helping them to establish, a brand that they can go out and talk about that can be, better sort of dressing for the party that, you're going to, and making sure that you look right and it's appropriate. But taking a step back, when I first joined, so I bought out in 2019, I bought out some of the previous owners of Struck, and took over as CEO. And in that sort of first year, I was really looking like, what do we do well? What don't we do well? Where should we be focused? And for better and for worse, we had work across the board, with every single conceivable industry. And I had a real aha moment where a good friend of mine who I'd known for multiple years, and I'd probably in year 2 or 3 of here at Struck, he asked me, goes, "So Andrew, what does Struck actually do? Like, what do I refer you for?" And it was this moment of like, oh my gosh, because we can do everything, nobody knows what we actually should be hired for. And so we went through a whole exercise, positioning, which we hear all about, in the advertising world, and we help our clients with it all the time, but we don't always take our own medicine. And, I wanted to make sure that people knew what to hire us for and what to refer us for. Doesn't mean we still don't do work in other industries, but, in terms of our stated focus, we've narrowed that down. And to say it's worked well would be an understatement. It's worked very well. And, now we are sort of we're the hot agency in biotech. We've probably done 30 different naming, branding, websites. We're starting to do some office design for some of them. And so, the fact that they see just we're stating that this is something that we do and we're focused on helps them to feel good about their dollars being spent and, where it's going and who it's going to. So, yeah, I mean, it's been great. And, we actually, we have a separate piece to our business. Another thing that I found when I joined Struck was we had this incredible history of creating a lot of physical space design. So for example, Nickelodeon Animation Studios, we redesigned, they were competing against, Disney Animation, Pixar, Universal, for talent. Well, Nickelodeon actually has this incredible history in the animation world. They're legendary in terms of like a lot of the things they did, but they were struggling to just compete for talent. Well, we went in and we just redesigned their whole space and helped them to create this really engaging, inspiring, space that people wanted to be in. So the first time they came, they're like, as an animator, you're seeing the names and you're seeing on the walls like the names of people you've admired and studied in school and whatever. And now they get to see that, and it's very inspiring. So it's inside, outside, everything. We've done a lot of the different, sort of physical space design. And so but it was hard because I was hearing from a lot of people like, wait, so you guys do brand and campaign, but you also design like help design buildings, or like retail locations or restaurants. And so we split. I mean, it's still one P&L, but we have a structure and struck site. And structure is the physical space piece. And it's just much easier. It has its own website now, just so that people, again, know what to hire us for. And that piece of the business is going very well. We're, currently engaged in, 4 or 5 different massive multi-year projects we're building, a candy shop and an ice cream shop for a local or Utah-based amusement park that, in terms of creativity, it's going to rival sort of Disney level creativity and engaging. It's beautiful what we're doing, and a lot of fun. And so that piece of the business, again, just helping people understand. So coming all the way back to the beginning of your question, is like, I knew we needed to tell a better story of helping people understand what to hire us for, as opposed to sort of like, oh yeah, so you guys work with this and this and this and this, everything. Now they know what to hire us, or friends know what to refer me for.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Oh, definitely. Well, and it's a great endorsement for, the idea of like niching down. And I think that is one thing that, maybe the instant hesitation and I'd love if like you want to clarify on this at all, is that, when you start to niche down, that you're like, oh, but what if I wanted to take on CHIA, and it's not preventing you from doing that, but you're saying it's like, obviously it's been extraordinarily successful. It helped get you more down those certain avenues. And that didn't mean that you had to turn away the other business, but it literally just gave you, or maybe the people that might refer you an easy pathway into saying, this is what that agency does,
Totally. Yeah, you're exactly right. And it really opened up way more doors than it closed for us. And we're still seeing that. And quite frankly, I'm even looking at, do we need to niche down even more? Is there, something we need to do? And, the biotech stuff is amazing. And, we've talked about, is there a third brand that we eventually sort of launch, which is the struck.bio? We own that URL, and, does that become something that's just very specific there? Because that industry is not going anywhere. I mean, it's got a lot of opportunity. And especially, something that's interesting about the biotech world is, in the advertising world, we don't always, I've helped sell beers, I've helped sell chips, I've helped sell crackers, I've helped, kind of, you name it. Not very often do you get the chance to actually help like cure cancer, right? In biotech, we're literally doing that for some people. We're helping, them to, we're playing a very small role. Obviously it's their, their brains and their science and their tech, but we're helping them to raise the money. We're helping them to get the funding that they need to do that. And I found with a lot of my team here that they love that aspect of it. It's very much like, wow, we're making a difference, and this is, we're helping to make a difference. And so just even that aspect of, again, kind of narrowing down and saying we do this, I think has helped to kind of inspire the team here to really always do our best work there and help do, not that we wouldn't do our best work for anybody, but when there's an emotional piece there, it can help. Certainly.
Definitely. Yeah, they can put their heart in it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's awesome. This is a little kind of topic change here, but I saw that one of the topics you like to cover is the RIP to the RFP, and really, honestly, good riddance. If we could, wouldn't that be wonderful? And it's just so funny because, like, I personally feel like it's such a challenge to pick personality based on, RFP responses. Sometimes if you don't get any initial meeting, there's absolutely no contact with some of those agencies through an RFP process. So, I mean, like, I think, it definitely can be bad for not only the agency, but also the businesses that are, or organizations or, whatever that are putting the RFPs out there. So do you think there's a better way to find chemistry with an agency, outside of that process?
100%. Nobody really likes the RFP process other than maybe procurement folks, right? Procurement folks like that. But for the most part, nobody, client side, agency side, nobody likes it. It's this long drawn out, process that, quite frankly, like it's silly to me when they ask for references. Well, I'm not going to give you a reference if somebody went, I mean, it's that age old thing. Of course, I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to tell you, I like long walks on the beach. If I'm on a relationship profile, like, of course, you're going to do everything. So, for us, our typical, when people reach out to us and say, hey, we're going to be sending out an RFP, you guys, and particularly if it's something that's like very well suited for us, I will lead off, and the team here will lead off by saying, well, we typically don't respond to RFPs, which then they go, well, why? And we go, well, because we don't think they're useful at all. And they're like, well, okay, so how do you guys get work? Well, we like to have a conversation. And this is where I'm really focused on, let's just have a conversation if you're willing to have a conversation with us and help us to understand what you're really trying to achieve. Because that's the other thing is, when people come to us, sometimes like, oh, we need a website. Well, okay, great. That may very well be what it is, but can we understand where you're really at and what you really need? And, there's a big chunk of time where that's not actually what they need. They don't need that. They need something else, but they just were told by somebody to go and get, 3 bids on this or whatever. And, the other piece that I talk to a lot of folks about is, number one, it's expensive. There's been some reports out recently that have been done by a couple different groups, including, I think the 4As did something of, how much it costs an agency to participate in, and brands to participate in RFPs. And it's a staggering amount of money, staggering. Yeah. And so if they've reached out to us, they've done any homework at all, they're reaching out because they know we could do the work for them. Right? They believe that we could do the work for them. So let's just get to the point of, hey, let's start, and let's start working on something. And we'll have a very natural sort of point where we can look at each other and say, this is working or it isn't working. And you get the work, you get the work product we've done, we'll hand over whatever discovery or initial research or initial concepting, but we can look at each other and decide. But then also you're 3 months ahead of time or 2 months ahead of time of what you would have been. You get to start, right away. And I would say 60, 70, 80% of the time at work that people go, yeah, I hate RFPs. Yeah, almost like they didn't even know that was an option.
Yeah. We can do this differently.
Yeah, let's just get going. And I think that, the RFP really, I believe, is a throwback to, it's manufacturing. It's, RFPs where I need to get this widget or this thing or this part, and they put out an RFP, and it really comes down to price and timeline and, quality assurance, whatever else. Professional services firms, you really, you don't go to you don't find a law firm and be like, hey, will you participate in this RFP for this, thing? No, you go to a law firm where you say, oh, either I'm referred to them because I know somebody knows them, but more importantly, they know my industry. They know my challenges. That's what I need. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that agencies have been not, I don't know, or still sort of stuck in that. And the other thing is, I think agencies, we've been way too accommodating. I have done this, so I've used this tactic, and please, you or anybody you ever come across, if there's an RFP that you want to go after and they're asking for spec creative, I hate spec creative just like everybody else does. And one of the biggest reasons, besides just giving free work, is I don't know enough about you to really stand confidently behind what creative I'm going to deliver. I have not gone through, we have a process that is very buttoned up and we're very good. So what I've done, and I've probably used this, 7 or 8 times in my career, is I will suggest to the brand, I'll say, hey, look, so you're just trying to judge us against the others, what our creative output, ideation is. Yes, exactly. Even if they're lying, right? They might be literally saying we want free work, but they'll never say that out loud. Then I'll say, well, then here, do you guys have a cause that you are not for profit or somebody that you support? And almost every company of any size has something that they sort of stand behind. Great. Why don't we all, you ask us and the other agencies to design a new homepage or, a new campaign for that, not for profit. So it's a win across we all get the exact same brief. We all design something that we're giving for free to this not-for-profit. They're going to be stoked about it. And you get to look good for the not-for-profit and say, hey, we helped you guys get this new thing. And if you're really standing behind them, well, it catches them really on their heels, because it's like, yeah, you basically just called our bluff. And if that's what they really want to do, is just judge our creative off everybody else's, here's a great way to do that, and how we think and how we approach a problem. Of those 7 or 8 times I've done it, I think almost 50% of the people just said, you know what, we're just going to go with you. Like, we love this. Like nobody's ever asked us that question. So let's just go ahead. A couple of times they actually took us up on it. And we did something for not Red Cross, for United Way once. We designed a new homepage for them. We did a couple things, but it was very fun to kind of go about it that way. So again, I think that's another way of approaching it. Sometimes you can't avoid being part of an RFP. Certainly a lot of states and a lot of government organizations, their hands are tied. You have to, go through that. But as much as possible, I think if we can disrupt that process, if you can get into it and get them to change their rules a little bit for you, it dramatically, the research shows it dramatically changes your opportunity for success with them. But, the other piece is, again, just getting into the data of it. If the incumbent is pitching again and they're wanting them to be there, we immediately bow out. No, we're not even, because again, the research shows you hardly stand a chance.
Right.
And so, just time to bow out right now and save everybody the time and money and effort. And the other piece is sometimes, and I've had this happen where people say, I'll ask them, like, have you already, if you've already chosen somebody, you just have to have 3 bids. I'm happy to scratch your back on this one, and I will provide you a bid. I'll give you, and you tell me what the number needs to be, so you look good to your boss or to your procurement people or whoever. And just, hey, keep me in mind for an opportunity in the future that's a good fit for us. I'm happy to do that. That's fine, because I get it. Sometimes you just got to play the game, and I can put something together in a half an hour and send it over to you, and now you can go, oh, well, here's our other bid. Here's our 3rd bid. So, all right, that's fine. But let's get away from the stupid process of and again, you're not, to your first point you made of, sometimes they don't even want to talk to you. They don't even allow you to have contact. What is that about? What an antiquated, stupid way of doing business. And you cannot tell me that you're going to select the best fit for you. That's like, again, it's sort of the arranged marriages. It's just sort of, at that point in time, that's all it is just, okay, this person and this person get together. Now you guys got to figure it out and see if that's the best fit for you. And you got to be talking. You got to have conversations and really understand what the goals and objectives and pain points are. So, that's a rant I can go on for a long time. So, apologies. Yeah, no, I'm winded here, but it just is something that drives me nuts. And I'm happy that we now are at a point where we don't have to respond to many, and we actively say we're not responding.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. No, it's all wonderful advice. And I think I will take you up on it. Yeah. If anybody's requesting spec work to do that for a nonprofit, it yields benefit, for both sides. And that's much more fun to do that than, trying to all right, what angle do we take? Yeah. And then how much research may have to go into providing decent creative for an organization. I mean, it's a ton. So, I guess the only thing that I have, that we do on our side is definitely, especially, if they don't want to talk up front, I think that's an instant cancel that out. Because if there's no conversation, you had mentioned chances of winning, and especially if they're there, great point of supporting the incumbent, or if they just need a bid. Yeah, exactly. Just, here, I'll toss you a number. Happy to, have us in the fold. But if I know that we're not, set up to win, you're throwing your time away potentially. And so definitely I appreciate all the advice you gave there. Yeah.
No,
cool.
It's fun. And I think also agencies can be addicted to sort of the pitch or not the pitch, but the presentation. Mm-hmm. And, we got to get away from that, because again, if that brand has done any homework of their own, they've already seen that stuff. Just get right into just the conversation. And then you can always share with them more examples or, whatever, if they need it. But we're so addicted to walking into a room and going through a deck, that's and then also you have no time left to actually have a meaningful conversation. So,
oh my God. You know what? You're speaking my language here. And that was one of the things. I think we had a presentation to a hospital association board one time. This goes back 10 years, but exactly that. We walked in and we're like, we actually didn't bring a deck with us, and we came here to have a conversation, and they were like, that was so insightful. And it was because we got to, listen and respond to the things that they were interested in, as opposed to just us regaling them with a few slides. So couldn't agree with you more.
It's it has been fun. That's, like I said, that's a fun sort of side benefit of this, is just getting to the point where we don't feel like we have to show up with this big, huge bloated deck and song and dance, pony, pony, whatever you want to call it. It's like dog and pony show. It's nice to get that. And I would say 100% of the time, the client is so relieved and impressed and engaged, where, sometimes body language is so fascinating, because you see people really doing the deck, presentation, sort of okay, We got to sit through this, arms folded, they're just leaning back. But when you start talking to them and asking them questions that are really meaningful, the engagement goes immediately up, and it's very fun, and also just, again, much more beneficial and helpful for what we want to do for them, or may potentially do for them.
That's awesome. Well, I guess you touched on this just, in a couple of questions back, but it was about, being remote. And actually just recently, my business partner and I did, an episode of Mix and Matchbox here where we talked about our decision to stay remote. We had formerly been, an agency that went to the office every day. And, and I know that other agencies might have a culture that, really depends on, sort of an office environment. But, what does it mean for you? And, what is your take on, the remote idea, the culture of, sort of, agencies, and what that means to you, not only maybe from the Nearshore standpoint, from definitely the Struck standpoint, but also as the board chair of the Society of Digital Agencies. You've got many hats to wear in the response to this question, but what do you think it means?
I think it's interesting. So, starting on the soda side, we've done a lot of research with this with agencies and with our members, and generally speaking, if they were around and they were doing really well before COVID, with the collaboration and in person, most people have gone back to at least hybrid. And I think that's kind of where everybody's at, right? It's a hybrid, and that's what we are here at Struck. Is it's sort of 2 to 3 days a week in the office, and the others can be from wherever. There's also been some research recently that talks about just sort of creative collaboration being higher in person for a lot of reasons, and it kind of outlines a lot of reasons for that. But so I do believe that the face-to-face is obviously very helpful from a cultural perspective, from a collaboration perspective. I think there are certain roles that are, pretty much you can do them anywhere. Software development, I think, is one, and that's something I've seen, and I've seen that kind of in my whole career. But what's interesting is companies that started during COVID or like post-COVID, again, same research from Soda, but they set their tools up, they set their sort of cadence of meetings and whatever in a virtual world. They are doing quite well, because that was sort of the foundation that was laid was during that time. And so I think that's a piece of it, is just that there is this, like, if you were set up that way, but we had too many people here who had been pre-COVID and knew the power of sitting together and sitting in a room. And I'm one of those people. I definitely enjoy being in a room with people, feeding off the energy. It's just hard to do that on over a Google Meet or a Zoom call or whatever. It's hard to capture some of that, in my opinion. And again, I think everybody's, but if you have the right tools and you have the right systems for it, then it could be much more effective. But we just weren't always set up that way. Here at Struck, and my previous agency, same thing. I mean, I was solo before COVID hit, but yeah, I do think that some roles, I think a strategy person can be sort of remote for a lot of time. I think client partners can be, remote part of the time, because a lot of their stuff is just talking to clients. But when it comes time to really digging in and collaborating and creating, the face-to-face is important.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's one of those things where, when you get the opportunity, and even as a remote company, you see everybody in person, you get to like discuss things, and things come up and you're like, oh my gosh, would that have happened if we weren't in person? And I feel like that is, it's fun. And then definitely where it's missing, you feel it, and I will say, doing a lot of like, business development or networking with like, clients, and wow, if you don't have some of that face-to-face, it's hard to understand, maybe the deeper side of people's, sensibilities and stuff without having, that in-person connection. Yeah. And I'm sure you have a ton of data, maybe at your disposal through the, through Soda. But I mean, like, yeah, there's that component that it's like, I don't think that'll ever go away. But you did touch on the tools and tool usage, and that is important. If you have that foundation, it is nice. And actually, I guess I would even venture to say critical, for you to, carry out, remote work, and make sure that you have like kind of the infrastructure at play in order to make that happen. But yeah, I appreciate your perspective on that.
Just related to it, I would say this one thing that I don't think will ever come back and I think it's great for everybody. I mean, I don't know that you would get a pushback from anybody on this, is that like the new business side of things, in the sense of, it used to be somebody reach out to us. Okay, well, they're in Boston. Okay, well, now we need to take, we lose a day traveling there. Well, they feel obligated to, sit down with them, take us to dinner that night, right? And then they, the next morning we get, you get coffee with them or whatever, and then they give you a tour of their offices and they introduce you to some people. Then you have your actual meeting that you're there for, maybe one or two of those, and then you have lunch with them. Well, and then, we get on a plane and fly back that night. Well, 2 days are gone, not to mention the expense of that. But also from the client perspective, they don't want to be taking everybody out to dinner, and they don't want to be having to host everybody. That piece, I don't think will ever come back. Where now, we get an inbound where somebody reaches out to us. We have a couple of Zoom calls, great. But then, of course, as soon as we engage with them, then there is a face, then we do get together. But now there's a lot more sort of reason for it and rigor for it. But I think everybody's happy that time and money waste is gone, and again, is not. I don't believe it'll ever come back to even close to what it used to be in terms of that whole. Well, we're going to come at them. We're going to do our dog and pony. We're going to do all these things. It's like, no, that nobody likes it. Nobody wants it. Anybody at any level, other than maybe some junior people, love when they can go out to eat and get expense on some stuff. But for the most part, anybody who's been around for any amount of time is like, please, I got enough things I need to do, and I don't need to have the company pay for a dinner, or an agency pay for a dinner or drinks. So anyway, like I said, related, but just something I am happy about, that is a change in the world.
I definitely agree. I know saving everybody a little bit of time and money, it just makes sense. It's interesting because you guys are definitely embedded in digital, and it's a field that's seen a lot of transition, I guess, over not only just the past 5 years, past year, wow, and the growth of AI, let alone 20 years. So what you've seen throughout your career. So what do you see as some of the next evolution for the field, exclusively for digital agencies?
I think there's a lot about just making sure that clients are hiring us because they can't do something in-house. They're hiring us because maybe they don't have that expertise or that point of view. So I think probably the most important thing is just making sure that we understand what's out there, making sure that we are ready to advise, and whether it's us doing it or us saying, hey, you need to find somebody, and we know some people if you're interested in some connections. But there's so many different angles and channels. Digital marketing being just sort of performance marketing is such a specific thing that has specific tools, specific capabilities that we don't ever want to do that. That's not something we want to do, because there are people who are so good at that, and so we have partners that we recommend all the time, and who we know are very good at that piece. And I think it's just that we have to understand the right questions to ask, and what the technologies are, and what the digital trends are. With AI, it's us being aware of everything, first of all, because if we're not aware of it, then we're caught flat-footed, and that's embarrassing in a conversation, first of all. But also, we need to now know what is it and why is it. And also, in my career, good grief, there's been so many shiny objects. There's always something out there that is new and fancy and fun, and then it sometimes it happens, and other times it goes away, or it becomes not as important. But it's important that we as agencies can advise our clients smartly and strategically on what those pieces are. And then, just because there is so many different channels and different things, we have to say, hey, we're really good at this, and here's where we can help you. I just kicked off an innovation exercise with the team, bought the new Apple Vision Pro, for the office, and I've challenged each discipline to come up with some interesting use cases or interesting ways to utilize that VR tech for their specific projects and their field that they focus in. And it's been really fun to see them so far starting to come up with some concepts. And I want to get it all the way to sort of some high def, proofs of concept type thing to utilize it. But just basically saying, hey, VR is here. It's not going anywhere. Who knows what it's actually going to be? Is it the metaverse version that Zuckerberg wants, or is it, a much different experience? We don't know. But, certainly with our structure side of the business, for us to be able to test virtual environments and, an environment before we actually build a wall or move anything around would be incredibly powerful and useful for our clients. And so, that's just one example of that. But I think just having a culture of innovation and putting together, making sure that you're always sort of looking at ways to promote that thinking of how to use things. And certainly AI is a big one. I mean, I've told anybody and everybody here, please go, I will reimburse you for the ChatGPT 4 because it is so much better than 3.5.
Yeah.
Go use it, go figure out how to use it. And we have a specific Slack channel that is just prompts, because once you find a good prompt, like share it, because that's half the battle. That's 3/4 of the battle. And I think on like these generative AI tools is just knowing what is the right wording, to get the response and the outcomes that you want. All that being said, I have a very strict, and we've done several trainings that we are not using any generative imagery on anything. And we'll use it for mood boards, we'll use it for ideation, we'll use it, of course, but that whole world has got a lot of figuring out to go when it comes to trademarks and copyrights and all the stuff that I'm not going to risk, that and putting our clients at risk. And of course, then as importantly, more importantly, putting our agency at risk. So, again, I think these are all just things we have to be aware of but understand it and know what it does and how it works, but may not necessarily use it or, be sort of purveyors of that digital tech focus piece. So
it's just important to have your finger on the pulse, and you definitely mentioned a couple kind of technologies there, and it's so interesting because everything is changing, but our job as agency partners, advisors, as you mentioned too, is to make sure you're putting the right solution with the right problem, and that doesn't always mean leading with the brand new shiny piece of tech, but being on the pulse of it is important. So I appreciate that. I guess this may be way off base from what we're talking about, already, which is nice to have a little diversion here. But like I'm interested because way back in 1998, you became the co-owner of a commercial janitorial equipment supply business, and it's coincidental because I actually just happen to know somebody else in the agency space who also had a cleaning company actually, and I was like, wow, is this something that just happens to people that are in agencies, and that's a lane of business to be in? But was this a way of getting into the business, and possibly sell your agency to them? What's the sort of reason for this company?
I'm a learn by experience kind of guy. Like, I loved school, but I couldn't wait to get out of school. I tend to be much better at throw me in the deep end, I'll figure out how to swim type thing. 1998 was a time when e-commerce and web was really brand new, and I wanted to figure it out, and I wanted to do something. I was working in finance at the time. I was in my second job out of school doing finance for a large telecom equipment company, and I just wanted to figure it out. So I found some products that were janitorial equipment and supply. So this is just kind of anything and everything, paper products and chemicals and vacuums and you name it. And I'm not a developer at all, but I built the website from like some tools that were available at the time. I mean, this is way before any of the, now amazing tools you can do with, commerce. But, and I built the site, and I wasn't actually even really doing it to sell anything. I wanted to learn and figure it out and kind of what this was about. Well, it turned out actually it started to grow, and it actually led to how I started my first agency, which is I knew, okay, I was in over my head, and I needed to either shut it down because it was kind of causing a bit of a just bottleneck of time. And thankfully, my wife actually stepped in and was helping kind of run it and fulfill a lot of orders. But I knew I needed to hire somebody, and so I kind of looked around. I hired a freelance designer, and then I hired some developers for that piece. Well, funny enough, some friends and different people I knew found out I had developers on that were working for me. They go, hey, can we hire you guys to do this? I'm like, huh. That's how I started my previous agency, was just off of that right there. So the cleaning business absolutely led to me being in the agency world. And it was just because I had, talent sort of that I had, sort of on staff, kind of quote unquote, and then it just led to now, what Rain was very much a tech and innovation focused agency. And yeah, so, I shut down Uclean was the name of it, uclean.com. I shut that down about 10 years ago. I had neighbor kids who were, working for me to ship stuff. It was really fun, but it just, with the rise of Amazon, now, I couldn't compete against Amazon and all of the products that they were, they can sell and have on your doorstep in 4 hours, time. So, but it did quite well for a number of years. It was a lot of kind of fun, just something different.
Yeah, definitely. It might have been a catalyst for all the rest. So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the last question I have for you here is about brand transformation. And I know this is something that I guess, you speak about a lot, and I know that, Struck is really focused on, but it is a big deal. And there's a quote on your site, and it says, "And while the journey's an adventure, it needn't be a wandering one. It's strategic, even scientific, but most of all, it's human." And so, we've got a path right now towards, an inevitable AI future, in whatever capacity that really takes on. But why is the journey a human one towards, this brain transformation? And why is that journey so important that it is human?
Yeah. So, one of the big beliefs that I have is, business transformation has been around forever, right? The first person that grew more crops in their cave started selling to, trading with somebody in the cave next to him, right? That was a business transformation moment. That's where your McKinseys, your Deloittes, your whatever come from. They're your big business transformation, management consultants. Digital transformation obviously is a little more recent, and kind of is in the last 20 to 30 years, where people are now, having to kind of figure out how best to leverage all the SaaS products and, what they need to build themselves, or they can just buy off the shelf and utilize. But what happened out of all of that is, it's very easy, not very easy, but you can oftentimes copy what somebody else is doing on the business side. You can match their pricing, you can match their distribution model, you can match whatever. Same thing on the digital side, with SaaS. The experience is the piece that stands apart. That's the piece of the iceberg that, people see. That's what customers interact with. I don't know. I'm sure there has been somebody who's done this, but I really doubt there's people who've been like, I want to work with that company because of how amazing their back-end code is, right? People aren't making a decision because of back-end code. No, they're making a decision because of some sort of experience they've had, whether it's in store or, some sort of motion that was created. I put AI as really becoming part of that digital transformation bucket, because it's going to be available to everybody, and it is available to everybody. Sure, you can leverage it better than others. You can, do different things with it, but it still comes back to, you have to create something unique. You have to create something that it stands apart than your competitors. For the longest time, every single airline mobile app was exactly the same. I don't know this for a fact, but I suspect a lot of them were probably licensing the same, technology from somebody, or they just copy each other. So there was no unique experience there. There was nothing that created like, oh, wow, okay, this is different. This is unique. And AI is going to be a incredibly, obviously, very powerful tool, and will create a lot of efficiencies and a lot of opportunities. But at least the way that I view it is that human element, that emotion that we need to create for somebody to visit, buy, share, like, whatever that is such a human one. And so if everybody is using the same tools, then everybody's going to become very sort of desensitized to that. And so it needs to come back to this human element, this human story, to create that emotion that is necessary for us, for our clients to accomplish what they need to do, or what they want to sell, or whatever it is that they do. So, I view AI as, no question, it's game changer, and it's going to be amazing. Already is, but it's going to be part of that digital transformation piece, which is sort of like becomes table stakes for everybody.
Right.
And so it's going to come back to making sure you tell a really great human story and create human emotions. And look, in the future, will AI become that, emotion based and whatever? Maybe. And maybe that's going to be a conversation we can, I don't know, in 10 or 15 or 20 years, let's get back on the call and, talk about where it's at then, or maybe it's even sooner than that. Who knows? But, at least my belief is that human piece is what really drives the change in the behavior that our clients are trying to do. They're trying to have.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That's great. At the end of the day, it's still people communicating with people. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's yeah, even if and I appreciate you saying that, yeah, if we're all served the same tools, we have to find that way of getting ahead and and differentiating. So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, honestly, this has been super fun to go through some of these questions and stuff with you. And yeah, and I must say, yeah, not only the project with CHIA, but you guys at Struck, you have some really cool work and stuff going on. So yeah, if there's anything that you want to put out there, feel free in terms of websites, places to find you at or check you out. Feel free to let the people know.
Yeah, you know what? Struck.com, best place to find it. I wrote a sort of manifesto, which I always kind of cringe when I hear that because it feels like it's very overplayed. But I wrote a manifesto about maybe a year and a half ago that really talks about the sort of experience in digital and why it's important to focus on all three. And while we don't do those other two, it's important, and it's a constant evolution. It's not something like you don't just build it and set it and you're done. These are constant evolutions. So if anybody's interested, that I do feel good about that as just sort of a piece that anybody should be thinking about, and regardless of what industry, but we should be thinking about it that way. And yeah, then all the other social channels are sort of linked there, and wherever they want to find us and follow us. But yeah. It's a fun industry. It's a fun business, and I really appreciate the time, and very fun to chat with you. And the Nicaragua connection is just amazing, and very fun to make that connection. But also just all the other topics I think are very relevant, very fun, and I really really particularly that last one around the inevitable sort of AI future. And I just believe so strongly that as humans we've got to do a better job of being human with each other. And brands need to be human and vulnerable, and that's how you get people to really think twice about your business and your brand. And so appreciate the chat.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. I appreciate that. We've got an evolutionary challenge of remaining human. Yeah, as we see all these tech tools come into place. But yeah, definitely. Thank you so much again for being on the show, and definitely it was great to have you. Great chatting.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Brent.
This has been another episode of Mix and Matchbox. I am your host, Brent Feldman. We will be back soon with more content. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.